Hey everyone, welcome to our latest Trade of Black podcast. Happy Wednesday midweek. I'm your host, Shad Dales. Big podcast here today. What's great numbers to say the least regarding Cresco Labs this morning with their latest earnings. Anthony and I are going to dive into that and also bring in their CEO, Charlie Bachtell, to talk about the latest earnings, where they sit as a company right now, and also get some insight on what he thinks is going to happen next regarding adult use in Pennsylvania, among other things. So that's the main reason why you should listen to today's podcast as well. We'll break it down, Ayr Wellness's latest earnings, and a few things regarding New York and parallel cannabis. So let's jump in right now and welcome in TDR co-host Anthony Varrell. Happy Wednesday. Good to see you.
How's it going?
And I know you were part of those earnings calls this morning, but impressive for Cresco to say the least.
Yeah, there was a lot to like on the earnings call. I'm excited to dive in. I mean, it seems like they're firing on all cylinders in a lot of their key markets. The Ayr call had a lot to like as well. Two positive prints, and I mean, I think this rounds out the earnings season for the tier 1 and tier 2 operators.
Yes, good work by you. I think a lot of people appreciate it. I know you were on a couple of Twitter spaces earlier this week, and yeah, it's good to see obviously your name getting out there more and more, and people respecting obviously a lot of your opinion. But I think a big round of applause for you over the last couple of weeks and the amount of effort and work that you've put in to give your insight and takeaways. People love opinion, which you are good at. So nice work. All right, let's welcome in CEO back to the podcast of Cresco Labs, Charlie Bachtell. Happy Wednesday. Good to see you, sir. How are things?
Hi, guys. Things are good. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, appreciate it. And let's just jump right into it. Latest highlights on your, if your latest earnings, they include revenue of $184 million, gross profit of $92 million, along with adjusted gross profit of $95 million, which was up 7% year over year. Adjusted EBITDA the first quarter was $53 million, up 82% year over year, and $36 million in operating cash flow, up 1,000% year over year, and $33 million in free cash flow. So I have to ask, we're seeing a lot of consistencies amongst a lot of players in the space right now. Operation efficiency is getting stronger and stronger, which you've demonstrated in your latest earnings. Is this where you envision this company to be right now, especially knowing the number of growth catalyst moments that we have on the near-term horizon?
Yeah, so what I would say is for this version of the company, this is exactly where we wanted to be, and potentially even ahead of schedule. We had a slightly different strategic path that we announced a couple of years ago with a big M&A deal, and but recognizing that wasn't going to be feasible, we made some really tough but good decisions about this time last year, and we're seeing it bear fruit, and that's all we could ask for. I mean, really, the teams have bought in. And they are, Anthony, as you said, they're firing on all cylinders, and it's great to see the results.
Yeah, I bet. Go ahead, Anthony.
Yeah, I mean, you kept saying the year of the core on the conference call this morning. I mean, are you going to write a book on that once the cannabis story is all said and done? Because whatever that philosophy is, or however you've re-engineered the business, reinvigorated the business, I mean, congratulations, because it's worked. I mean, I kind of want to start in Florida. As that's one of the markets I get to go to Sunnyside, get to see the products. I know the quarterly revenue is up 100% sequentially. You gave great guidance into the state going into adult use. What is working in the state of Florida? Is it pricing power? Is it your marketing and loyalty? What's gotten into this market from a Cresco and a Sunnyside perspective that is resonating and working with that Florida consumer?
So I could give you a bad, easy answer and just say everything. Florida reflects a lot of things lining up, a lot of strengths from the organization culminating in one marketplace. But the better answer is, honestly, if you zoom back out to where we were about a year ago, and again, we were headed in a different direction, looking at closing the largest M&A deal that the industry has seen, with a ton of integration complexity that would go along with it, but strategically solid path, to then having to pivot and make the adjustments that we needed to make. And in doing so, not only did it allow us to, did we have to sort of reset the focus and the prioritization, but it allowed us to just take it further and go, let's not even stop with what our existing footprint is. Let's really dig into what we do as an organization, what we do well. And with all of the different dynamics that impact the cannabis space, all of the complexities, all of the sort of headwinds that we just inherently have as an industry, access to capital, cost of capital, all these things, really sort of owning that and saying, hey, there's nothing that we can do about it except face it head on. And how do we want to do that? And that's where you get like, okay, here's our core. Here are the markets that move the needle for us. Here are the capabilities that we have that we can lean into and drive more out of. And in Florida, what I love about Florida is an execution test. That verticality, that forced verticality there is no release valve. There's nobody that can bail you out. You've got to be able to grow it. You got to be able to manufacture it. You got to be able to open stores. You got to operate the stores, and you got to meet the consumer where they want to be met. Like, you have to do it all. You're on an island. And I think that's why I'm super proud of not only the Florida team, but that Florida team really it's the broad leadership team of these different functions of our organization, having the bandwidth, having the focus by us focusing on the core and not being distracted by non-core elements that we'd had in our footprint, and showing their muscles. And it's pretty cool.
I was about to ask, I mean, a lot of people don't realize your leadership in some of the top markets in the country, PA, Illinois, Massachusetts. Was it kind of taking all the key learnings from those markets and then deploying it into Florida to get it right overall?
Continuous improvement is in the blood. So it's all of it. It's taking what we've learned here and deploying it in Florida. It's taking what we learned in Florida and deploying it into the other markets. So we learn from the good and the bad of all of our markets.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. Because something in Illinois could be a lot different in Florida from what I hear from previous interviews. You got to pivot fast. But was that your idea, the term, the year of the core?
Oh, I think I've got a great leadership team here. So
love it.
The ideas tend to come from good-spirited, well-intentioned conversations from truly engaged people. Like we really do. I've got a great team here, and more than coming up with the name for it, it's getting everybody to buy into it, which was key.
Love it. Well, Florida, big risk, big reward, right?
Well, and what I love about it too is we've got runway in the medical structure also. Proving that we can execute down there and gain share in the medical structure while we're all in and leaning in hard on getting adult use across the finish line. There's opportunities for us to grow incrementally in the current format and also in adult use. So it's a nice, it's not an or for us, it's an and.
When you look back a year from now or a year ago to where you are now, like, what do you think changed? Like, when you took a step back as a business that's led to, like, you know, some of these promising numbers and operations efficiencies, like, what has stood out? Like, you talk about the things that you focus on, but what was the conversations from 12 months ago that made and had these changes made to, like, you know, basically set you up where you're today? Like, what stands out?
There's so many conversations and so many sort of components that went into it. But look, hardship is a great test for anybody. And, you know, this time last year in our industry, it was a challenging time. So you had to have real conversations, and you had to make real decisions. And you had to have a group of really engaged leaders, and we're fortunate. You know, I think that's one of the best things that we've been able to do is really get not only incredibly like talented people on this team, but they care. There's an authentic level of commitment to being successful, whether it's at the mission and vision level or at the execution level. And again, it's not an or, it's an and. Those things are so intertwined with each other here. It's everybody's all in on this. It's great.
Yeah, gotta have it.
How is Ohio shaping up ahead of adult use? I know it's looking like we're going to have accelerated timelines. Is there any incremental capex that needs to go into that market, or any sort of incremental cultivation that needs to come online to service that market from an adult use perspective, or are you pretty much good to go as it sits in Ohio?
Sorry, I think the answer to that is yes. Like I think there's more needed, and I've been a little muted on this today. Just because it's exciting, right? No doubt about it. Like I love the fact that things are moving faster than they should. And again, that's a testament to the advocacy in that state, that when, you know, the ballot initiative passes in November, immediately going to work. And there's some great local leadership in the state there from some local operators and Ohio-based operators. So it's nice. That's not always the case. But there's some great leadership on the ground there, and really activating the education with the legislature on, look, we've seen this before in other markets. There's risk to the viability of the market and the complexity of the market the longer the distance is between passing the law and launching of the program. And so if there's anything that can be done to accelerate it, there's a lot of public health, public safety components that are benefited by moving it forward. And it's just great to see that come to fruition. That said, I said it on the call earlier today, but it's like it is like when your plane lands 30 minutes early to your destination, but then the gate isn't ready yet, and you got to sit there for 15 more minutes. So you're still there 15 minutes more or earlier than you were supposed to be, but things aren't always perfect when you arrive earlier than you expected. And so then also, if you look at how Ohio came to be, ballot initiative that nobody was building in front of. Right. And where cannabis has been, and you've got a high hurdle there, and it's a ballot initiative. So nobody's building in front of it. Then it passes, and you have a very outspoken conservative based legislature that wasn't very happy about it and said that they were adamant about making some changes to it. So nobody's building then, to then now all of a sudden pivoting to, okay, instead of us telling you we're not going to be ready by September, we're actually going to be ready in June. So as a market, there's going to be some stuff left to do when adult use launches in June.
Man,
do you think that adult use rolling out in Ohio? Do you think Floridians, from a government and just general population perspective, are going to look to Ohio to see what adult use could potentially look like, and just start to get comfortable with the idea, or take away any key learnings from that ballot initiative passing, implementation, and then rollout?
Yes. And look, I've been parts of conversations at state level and at federal level where Ohio is identified. It's a purple state, right? And it's a bellwether type situation. And you're also seeing the combination of cannabis and abortion on the same ballot.
Yeah.
And the turnout for that. So I've heard it from both sides of the aisle too, that they're responsive. They see it and they're responsive to it. And I also think too, the pace at which that legislature and that administration is now leaning into it and saying open faster is also a really good sign for the regulated cannabis industry.
Goes to show the perception of this industry and just how it's been viewed for such a long period of time. But if people start to do a little bit of homework on it, it's just their stance changes, and it changes in a hurry. But this is all part of the grinding process for the industry. But look, last time we had you on the podcast, I asked you a pretty bold question: is whether or not you believe that rescheduling will happen prior to the election. And if you, being the most influential CEO in this space, and what I mean by that, there's a lot of people that reach out to us. They love the quiet confidence that you present as a CEO of this company. Saying that, I do want to shift to Pennsylvania. What are you seeing or hearing as far as adult use and how that's moving along?
It's in a pretty good spot, but again, this is where the subject matter and the politics, I've heard this phrase so long, and I've mentioned it multiple times, and I hated it when I first heard it, but good policy doesn't always make good politics. I think that you just never, I think from a policy standpoint, there's support for it, but it is part of the political machine at a certain point where that's where we're at a federal level. Like, I think from the policy perspective, you've got agreement on both sides of the aisle from enough people to say something should happen at a federal level for cannabis. It's now the political components that just need to line up. Similar in every state. But I do like the fact that the governor has it in his proposed budget for next year.
Yeah.
One thing I've learned is they hate taking revenue streams out of budgets once they've got their eye on it. So that's a pretty encouraging sign. But we'll know more in the next 60 days on the path forward in PA.
I think you had guided, 50 to 70 million CapEx spend for this year, for 2024. What markets are you looking at? Do you have a certain number of retail you'd like to get to in Florida? I mean, is that going into like something like PA, which I know that you guys are already capped on retail, but growing out more cultivation ahead of adult use? Like, where do you see those CapEx proceeds getting deployed?
Primarily Florida. And the great thing is too, it's a and situation that we get to benefit from there. We see growth runway in medical and potentially adult use. And so we're moving forward with kind of a two-phased approach down there. Phase one serves us from a production side. It's needed for either outcome. We need it for medical growth, and it'll also help with adult use. Phase two would be adult use dependent. The way that we look at retail down there too also depends. So the given is phase one of production expansion. That's a given, and that's the majority of that number. What we do on retail in Florida is dependent on the outcome in November, and then Pennsylvania, we've got a lot more infrastructure in Pennsylvania than we do in Florida. And
you're number one in PA, correct?
Yeah. And we actually have a bit of underutilized capacity there, so that's nice. So we can flex up, and we'll continue to make some incremental allocations to PA to make sure that we're as ready as we need to be. But it's not as meaningful of a lift as Florida for us.
Yeah. Well, we're in May right now, 2024, reaching around the midway point, the next 30 to 45 days. We've seen a lot of interest, jump back into this industry. It's back and forth, but the interest level is still there, both positive and negatively. And I like asking these overarching big picture type questions. But if you look at just the way this year is producing and developing for the overall industry, where do you think we are at the end of 2024 when it comes to rescheduling, Measure 3? Like, if we're having this conversation 6 months from now, do you see a lot of new money entering into this space before the end of the year?
It's a great question. I think we need federal reform for really, like, when we're talking about that meaningful new money, that institutional capital. I think cannabis, for better or worse, cannabis has turned into a show me story. And look, it's our own, it's on us. The great thing, like you said, is the industry and the top operators are showing everybody that we're getting better, we're getting smarter, we're getting more efficient and effective. But I think we need to see evidence. We need to see something move in DC. I do think rescheduling happens. That I've got a pretty high level of confidence in that. So I think at the end of the year, I think we see that. Whether or not there's a movement on a legislative front is TBD.
Well, we speculate
about that scenario if we got both.
Yeah, we speculate whether or not, if rescheduling does happen, that's going to grab obviously a lot of politicians' attention, because rescheduling, as we've said, Anthony, is outside of their sandbox. But I think something like that would grab their attention. And does that apply pressure to get safer, passed, knowing that this is no longer a Schedule I drug, which is extremely valuable information, right?
From my perspective, I think it's impactful. I think it absolutely increases the likelihood. There was some concern, and appropriately so. I think there's some concern of, like, don't take the foot off the gas. The problem is not solved, job not done with rescheduling. I don't think that'll be the reaction. I think it'll be a encouraging reaction.
Yeah, I do too. Well, listen, you got to get those hats made. The year of the core. I think those would go viral, my friend.
I appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, we've had a lot of great comments. People increasing their position for quite some time, but they love the latest numbers. We also had somebody come out here and ask if you're a Blackhawks fan and if you're growing a playoff beard, because it's the NHL playoffs. But all in all, I think people love what you're creating, and keep up the good work. But we all know easier said than done when it comes to scaling. You got to have a passionate team, and when you have that, it's all about execution. So job well done, and keep the momentum going.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Thanks,
Carly.
Talk to you soon.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Man, 12 months later, like, they have definitely flipped the script, and that quiet confidence somebody actually mentioned here, I think it was Guap. That is indeed the case, but look, Anthony, like we've talked about grinding it out and building out a team that's passionate. Like that's the reality. If you build a team that's passionate about what they do and they want to succeed and they're bought in, you cannot overlook that, because that's where it starts and ends for any company. And if he's built that, obviously the proof is in the pudding based on what he's creating, right?
Just look at the numbers. They're number one in wholesale finished products in a lot of states, a lot of key competitive markets. They're number one in a bunch of very, very highly competitive markets. And they're winning market share in places like Florida.
I know.
That's not easy. I was very vocal and I was questioning a lot of stuff that was going on with Cresco 18 months ago. You could find it on Twitter. I was completely wrong. Cresco fundamentally is right now one of the best companies in the space. They have righted the ship. They have dialed in operations. They're getting a lot of stuff right, and it is showing and shining through in the earnings prints.
Yeah,
they've got a long way to go, and though they're going to be one of the big dogs that's around for a while in this industry.
I think the encouraging thing with Cresco and everything revolving these earnings is the operation efficiency is getting better. And it's what Charlie said, we're getting better at what we do. And I think a lot of people are. And that's where they know the institution, show me the money. And, that's all part of the growing pains of any new emerging industry, which is the case. But short-term catalyst moments, we've got a lot on the horizon, very lucrative states that they're in. When we talk about Measure 3, rescheduling, Pennsylvania, adult use in Ohio, like, wow. Imagine having that conversation.
PA, just think about PA, because they are number one in Pennsylvania.
Number one.
They're number one in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Number one in Pennsylvania, and that'll be a massive catalyst as far as growth goes to the top and the bottom line for them. And then they have Florida, which they're on the up and up. 100% revenue growth quarter over quarter in the state of Florida. That says something. I know they had a couple of basis point pop. Yeah, I know they had a couple of basis point pop in the pre-roll category in Illinois. They're also showing strength in Illinois quarter over quarter. That's a very tough market. Those are hard markets to win in, and they're winning. So, I look forward to seeing the continued strength the rest of the year, and I'm really hoping that we hit in stride the catalyst that we're looking to hit in PA and Florida and Ohio. And their numbers are going to continuously, I think, look better quarter over quarter for a while now.
Well, boys, Guap's on a roll today. That's why they call me Fidel Cashflow. I like that. All right. That concludes segment number 1, our exclusive interview with CEO Charlie Bachtell. Let's go into segment number 2, which is Into the Wire, headlining the biggest headlines in cannabis today. We'll jump right into our first topic. It's Ayr Wellness and their latest earnings. Again, strong numbers, I would say, included revenue of $117.7 million, which is a 2.8% increase from the previous quarter. Gross profit, $48.3 million. Adjusted EBITDA was $26.3 million, a 10.6% increase year over year. So I know you were part of the earnings call here this morning as well on that. What's your big takeaway for these latest results?
Yeah, to kick off the call, David started with talking about how they're streamlining and creating congruency across their entire footprint to brand everything into the Ayr retail brand. They're really focused on launching Kind and Haze throughout the breadth and depth of their platform. There was a lot to like on this conference call. One of the main things that stuck out to me, 15 out of 91 of their retail locations are in adult use. So roughly 84% of their portfolio still has adult use conversion on the horizon. That being said, it's kind of mental gymnastics when you look at that. Yes, 84% of the portfolio has yet to experience adult use conversion. However, 64 of those locations are in Florida. So that leaves 12 locations out of their Florida, 12 locations outside of the Florida assets that have yet to have adult use conversion.
That's a great stat. That's like knowing the game within the game. 84%.
Yeah. CapEx spend, they guided to about a $20 million CapEx spend, and they reported $8 million CapEx spend as of the end of Q1. And I don't think that included any opening of retail. So I'm curious to see if that number goes up or how they guide for that moving forward. But again, that was another positive aspect of the call. And then a lot of the conversation was about Florida. They want to get to 70 stores. They're confident that the infrastructure that they have in Florida right now can service the adult use market, but there was a lot of language about building out an indoor grow. I know they want to get into the high-end flower market in Florida, and to do that, they're going to need pretty large indoor grow facilities as it relates to the state. So, I mean, that's something that I'm really looking for in the coming quarters to early 2025.
Yeah.
And then the language around paying down the debt. Ayr addressed their debt. They punted it to 2026. As we all know, they issued those special warrants to current shareholders, which is much appreciated. But they dealt with their balance sheet. They dealt with their balance sheet in one fell swoop. And just because they punted the debt down the road, and it does look like it could be a pretty largely dilutive event down the road, it doesn't necessarily mean that they can't be eating into that, paying it off with the cash that's going to be generated potentially from these adult use conversions, as well as potential tax returns, as well as potentially operating in an environment that doesn't have 280E any longer.
So,
I mean, I genuinely don't expect that debt bomb to be the same amount that it is today as it is in 2026. And I mean, the call was overly positive. Their metrics were all up quarter over quarter. Thought it was a solid quarter. I'd love to get David on to talk a little bit more richer into the insights and into what he's seeing within the business. But it sounds like Ayr is doing very well. Cresco and Ayr both were very positive today. There was not a lot to not like in the prints, and I mean, both CEOs were very confident across both calls.
Anthony Cogniglo, good to see you, my friend. East writes, I think many people are overlooking the great work MSOs have done over the past 12 to 18 months. Kudos to the Cresco and Ayr teams. I think we can't talk or say enough good things, like, as far as, what all these MSOs have done. Because you talk about Ayr, you talk about Cresco, look at the numbers, obviously GTI, the latest earnings report, Trulieve, which could have been the highlight of this entire earnings season. It probably was. But I don't think you can overlook what these companies have done. But the big thing that we've noticed, the right people are in place now with these companies, pure operators. And now you're starting to see the growth of an industry. What's the last piece of the puzzle? Washington.
The pack is starting to separate. You're starting to see who the real operators are in this space and who the footprints are that have planted flags and they're operating, but you're not seeing them win market share. You're not seeing them aggressively build their wholesale business. It's really starting to show who are the big dogs in the cannabis space after this round of earnings.
Yeah, before we jump into our next topic, now that most of the earnings season is done, like, is that your big takeaway, that you're starting to see the big MSOs and what they're doing and operating efficiencies wise, that they're starting to separate from the pack and everything? Go ahead.
I can't get the 58% gross margin number out of my head that Trulieve dropped. That's a hell of a number, and they guided to mid-50s for the rest of the year. GTI, they made money again on a GAAP accounting basis, while doing everything by the book. That was amazing. I really like where Cresco. I really like where Cresco is right now.
You think about Cresco
business-wise. I'm a very big fan of what Charlie is doing, especially in Florida. When they talk about resurgence in Illinois, when they talk about number one in PA, Ohio, the rest of the markets that they have that they're strong in. I mean, for me, Cresco is a tier one. I know some people are like, well, what is it? No, Cresco is a bona fide tier one as far as everything goes. I think their forward 12 is over $500 million in revenue, close to 600 million in annualized revenue.
Yeah.
And it's just going to grow.
Sentiment right now is like Cresco, GTI, Trulieve. Those are probably the three most watched stocks in the space right now. And then right behind them is a handful of companies, Ayr, Verano. We haven't even gotten to some of the Canadian LPs, because as much as they're in a different country, they still benefit from any kind of news and movement from being on a senior exchange. So you can't say.
Yeah, and then there was also plenty to like in Verano and Curaleaf. I just those top three really stuck out to me.
Yeah.
From just where their business stands today.
Yeah. Anthony, have a good day. Good to see you, my friend. And he's off and running. Into the wire. This is TDR Traded Black podcast. I'm your host, Shad Dales, on with Anthony Varrell, who's been working about 20 hours a day for the past week and a half and is ready for a nap. I think a lot of work and effort that you've put in, but as usual, leave some comments below. Let us know what you think of today's show, some of the feedback that Charlie presented as well, what you thought of Ayr's latest numbers. As well, don't forget, if you got a chance, make sure to log on to our YouTube channel, as we said, you guys are right now, and check out our Small Cap Sunday previous podcast. We did a deep dive into Village Farms. They had some good earnings last week, and both that was
a really good segment last week with Michael. We got a lot of positive feedback on that segment. Michael was really good.
Yeah.
That was a really good segment.
I did not realize the amount of people that follow. Yeah, I didn't realize how many people follow the Village Farm story, but very impressed and glad we got a chance to connect with them. So leave comments below. Let us know if there's anything that you guys want to ask us as well. Just what your overall general thoughts were, the overall earnings season, anything that highlights you, please leave some comments below, smash that like button. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel along with our daily newsletter, the Baked In newsletter. We've highlighted 4 small cap companies right now that we're watching and why. If you want to find out what they are, log on to the Baked In newsletter. Into the wire. It's now time for topic number 2, and it's involving Parallel Cannabis, who today they actually settled a $7.4 million base with Legacy Knight, who was one of Parallel's investors at one time. Real quick, Anthony, explain to us what this all means. And you kind of hinted to me before the podcast some implications that this might lead to SNDL and tie them in. You want to explain more?
Yeah, so Parallel's been wrapped up in litigation for some time now. They have lawsuits ongoing in Florida. They have lawsuits ongoing in New York. There's a lot of questioning as to the funding of the business, whether it was insider transactions by Bo Wrigley and his team. Bo Wrigley, obviously, the I don't know what you call him, the chewing gum heir. So obviously generational wealth in another CPG industry. But the big story here is once these lawsuits have encumbered Sunstream and SNDL from getting these assets and amalgamating them via that Sunstream vehicle. So This was great to see. This lawsuit has been settled as of today in Florida. There's another lawsuit that's ongoing in New York that I'm assuming might be settled anytime now. And once these do settle, I'm not saying it's going to be smooth sailing for SNDL, but the boxes are just getting checked for Sunstream to really get in there and start to potentially operate and figure out the model for these assets.
So whatever has been standing in their way based on today's announcement pushes everything aside. And like you said, you don't want to speculate too much, but on paper, it looks like all systems go is what you're thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and Bull Shark, that's actually a really good point. Ayr Wellness too. I know we didn't mention them. I thought John put up a hell of a quarter as well. And they've got plenty of growth catalysts on the horizon. I also do think that they come down and you see them in Florida within the next 12 to 18 months. So Ascend is definitely in the conversation with the top operators from this last Q as well.
700 million in revenue. I like that interview last week with him, but he knows how to execute. That's another example is what we're trying to say. Operation efficiency, right?
The revenue that they're pumping out of those dispensaries is remarkable.
Why do you think that is? If you had,
they're good at retail. Retail's hard. Retail's really hard. I mean, obviously this is cannabis, so there's some demand that's baked in, but to actually gamify the retail experience, to have your dispensaries and your customer loyalty and everything clicking, you've got to be constantly thinking about how you can juice the basket sizes, how you can juice frequency. There's a lot of effort that goes into building that machine. And I mean, Ascend with 32 dispensaries or 34 dispensaries, putting out the number, I think it's 34, putting out the number of revenue that they're doing is pretty damn impressive.
Emilio, you just gave me the
Christopher Brady, that's not true. Weed does not sell itself. It used to sell itself, and it's gotten much more competitive.
Totally. Emilio Manguel, you just gave me the greatest idea. Please live program in Florida Election Day on Tuesday, November 5th to celebrate Florida recreational victory. We need to do a live stream that night. I'm flying down to Florida and we're going to go on location. I'm going to leave it to you to pick up the spot. I'm calling it right now that we are going to do a live stream in Florida on that day. That would be amazing.
So it's not the 5th, it's the 7th.
It's the 7th.
The 5th is a Sunday, I'm pretty sure. I'm almost positive election day is November 7th. Oh, no, the 5th is a Tuesday. I'm pretty sure election day is November 7th. I don't know why I have the 7th in my head. But yes,
election's always on a Tuesday, from what I understand.
Is it? Then he's right. It's the 5th. But yes, that'd be something.
I would totally watch TDR election coverage on network TV. Yes, I'm sure you would, Christopher Brady.
I mean, in Fort Lauderdale, Miami, it'd be a hell of a spot to ask people. So, are you voting yes on 3 that are going into heavily trafficked?
We are totally doing that. We are 12 our audience. Mark it in your calendar now. We're going to find the spot, let you guys know in the next 30 days. We need you all to fly down to Florida and be our crowd. And we all get a chance just to meet each other and celebrate in the same place that night, if, it does pass, because what a night that would be. But that is a phenomenal idea to be on location, because, man, that would be incredible for the industry, to say the least. So mark that in your calendar.
The best place to be with Tallahassee, but that's a stretch. That's a trek.
I'm just thinking out loud, just the amount of people that we could have show up and just have them in and out. Think of all the CEOs and executives that live down in your neck of the woods in Southern Florida. We could have them on throughout the evening as the election and the votes are coming in. But that's like I said, great idea.
Yeah.
All these promising things in the state of Florida, but topic 3, a state that doesn't have a lot of promising things, is New York. Last topic I wanted to bring up, like I said, out of New York, involving a number of New York regulators and a host of legal actions, potentially striking down as many 463 cannabis retail permits. You want to fill us in on this? Because just when we knew that New York roll was bad, it just gets worse and worse when you find out what exactly is going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, so this is a story that was originally reported by the Green Market Report. So I'm assuming they've edited it, and I'm assuming it's pretty sound. This lawsuit was brought by 4 applicants in the last round of retail applications in the state of New York that haven't heard back yet from the New York OCM. Surprise, surprise. But this lawsuit alleges that the last 463 retail licenses that were granted, there was a major step that was just neglected to be adhered to in the process. The step that they're alleging is that the New York OCM did not check with the municipalities, that the applicants actually checked with the municipalities for the zoning laws for where these retail locations were potentially going. That's a big deal.
How does that happen?
I don't know. It's a very big deal if it is the case, because we've heard that the New York OCM is underfunded. We obviously know that heads have been rolling for some time now, and it's a gong show there. But we're talking about licensing for cannabis businesses. This isn't something that is an easy process. It's not something that's a highly regulated, detailed process. If they're not checking where the applicants are stating their proposed dispensary is going to go, then there's no point. I mean, then what are they doing? In the state of Florida, if you apply for one of the super vertical licenses if the licensing process is open, you actually need to go and lease the properties and carry those properties until whenever you get the license, to make sure that when you do win the license, you have your retail already tied up. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
When was the New York OCM formed? Do you have any idea?
I have no idea. I'd be lying if I threw out a number.
Well, I had
to guess within the past 4 years, probably.
Yeah. Well,
medical's been there for some time now. But as far as that timeline goes, I'd be lying if I threw something out.
So they're lacking the resources, and you can see how this is overlooked. There's so many ways, like the cannabis space, especially after being in Washington last month, about how this is definitely overlooked in so many ways. And it's a sobering, I guess, reaction when you see the amount of mistakes in a state that potentially could be a $5 billion industry. Do I think they correct it? Yes. How long does it take? No idea, but it's going to be a long time.
No, and I mean midnight's right. I mean, obviously I'm not condoning any of this whatsoever, but it would be easier to move to New York and open an illegal dispensary than it would be to go by the book and lawfully open a CAURD licensed dispensary in the state of New York. It's kind of like what we joke about. It's like Canadians that are applying for citizenship in the U.S. It'd be easier for you to fly to Mexico and just walk over the border and just do it just do it the open way. I mean, it's kind of getting crazy, the lack of oversight that we have amongst a lot of things going on right now.
It's actually not a bad
idea. You'd be better off. You'd be much better off. Fly to Mexico, walk over the border. Again, I'm not condoning doing that, but it'd be much easier than doing it the right way. Just look at the way the government's operating.
It's wild. It's wild.
Yeah.
Focus on what, show me the money. Focus on what you can control, and at the same time, do it really, really well. And I think the big sentiment, as we said, for everybody that's watching here tonight, again, the big takeaway this earnings season, the MSOs are separating themselves from a lot of players in the space, but there are a lot of strong tier 2 companies producing some really strong revenues in very lucrative states. All about operation efficiency these last 2 weeks from what we reported. Did you see a comment that you were, I see your eyes lighting up.
Yeah. So I talked to Don yesterday for a decent amount of time. Mostly we were talking about just the viability of certain political figures stating that cannabis has already been rescheduled. Completely speculative conversation. Wow. Don actually responded to me about an hour ago, right before the show, that he had spoken to Mr. Hickenlooper about the video that he shot and distributed yesterday. However, Don says that he cannot share the conversation he had with Mr. Hickenlooper. He can say that he does not believe there is any nefarious intent and Schedule 3 is happening. That is exact words from the Don. I respect his privacy, as everybody knows. I mean, I don't really like to talk about my sources either as it pertains to certain matters. But we should be very cognizant of people speaking in past tense as it relates to rescheduling.
That's some good information, my friend. Good information. Did Don say, did we reach out, like, as far as him wanting to come on? You're obviously, just to let everybody know, Anthony, you're going to be away on Friday, but I will have a one-on-one interview with Kim Rivers from TruLeaf to talk about probably the highlight of the entire earnings season. So Kim will be joining me at 11 a.m. on Friday. But as far as Mr. Murphy, we should get him on next week.
Yeah, we can. I mean, obviously he can't disclose the gist of what we said on Twitter. But I'm sure Don might have some tidbits from what's going on in the Hill.
Yeah. In New York, what a shit show right now. I don't know if you saw yesterday either. The New York City Mayor, Eric Adams, came under fire for suggesting migrants could make good lifeguards because they are excellent swimmers. Did you see that on Twitter?
I did. I actually posted it yesterday. I can't go there right now.
Not good. We'll leave it at that.
No,
but man,
no, I actually don't mind. I don't mind Adams. I think some of the stuff he's doing is right, but then he says shit like that, and it's just like, between that and then Hochul's comments about inner city kids last week, that was just completely racist and just off base. But no, we're gonna go. You're gonna get me. Don't get me started. We're gonna go down a rabbit hole right now that I don't want to go down.
All right. Again,
being completely honest.
Good job these last week and a half. Take tomorrow and Friday off, and we'll catch back up with you from Monday after the close for the latest live stream. As I said, people, Friday morning, 11 a.m., make sure to log on. I'm going to be on with Kim Rivers one-on-one to talk about the latest earnings. We'll talk about the Jeffco facility. We'll talk about, like, example, the 58% gross margin, cash flow, incredible. Measure 3. Kim's been making a lot of rounds as far as being on different radio and television stations. We want to get an idea as to where that sits. So if you want me to ask any questions to Kim Rivers, leave comments below, smash that like button, and make sure to share this video with your network. We want to take this viral. We've got all these growth catalyst announcements coming in the near term. So when we have that opportunity, let's bring the whole cannabis universe here to the YouTube and our YouTube channel and bring on the biggest, best minds in the space that we can provide, all because of you, the network. We appreciate it. As usual, log on to thedalesreport.com, subscribe to the Baked In newsletter. And as usual, as I said before, the Small Cap Sunday podcast coming up with Bill McNarlin, our head analyst, this Sunday. But we've highlighted 4 companies we like and why, including one cannabis company. So make sure to log on to thedalesreport.com, subscribe to the Baked In newsletter, and find out what those are. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your afternoon, sir. And I will see you next Monday. And for everybody else, I'll see you back here Friday morning with me and Kim Rivers. Thanks, everyone.
And Guap.
And Guap. Mic drops with Guap.
Don't forget
and Dan
Guap.
the Chart Man.
Oh, yeah.
Anybody else? Hey, everyone. Thanks for watching our latest podcast. Lots of momentum building. You guys getting all excited? Leave comments below. Again, we want to take this viral. Smash that like button and make sure to click on that bell for all notifications as we start to bring on bigger and bigger guests. Don't forget to subscribe to our daily newsletter, the Baked In newsletter, by logging on to thedalesreport.com. And we want to take this viral, as I said, and make this community grow. So make sure to subscribe on that channel because we wouldn't be here without you. Thanks again, everyone, for watching.